Quick, when I say the word hell, what pops into your brain? Eternal fire, tormenting flames, a place of outer darkness separate from God, unending torture and punishment, a place with Cotton Eye Joe on endless repeat while you're forced to do the chicken dance for all time by a pitchfork-wielding piggy-faced demon. Or is it a made-up place created to control the masses? Facts are, a lot of things come to mind when we hear the word hell. That really depends on your religious tradition and disposition. And even from a Christian perspective, there are tons of different ways folks look at the bad place people might go to after they die. But what does the Bible actually say about hell? And how has this idea of hell changed throughout the centuries? The answers might surprise you. So let's do this. Let's get away from the sensationalism, disinformation, and the misdirection, and get down to the hard facts about the history of hell in the Christian faith. And oh yeah, hi. In case we've never met, my name's Ken. I'm a full-time non-traditional missionary that's been abroad for 5 years. I'm also a researcher and teacher that seriously digs history, especially ancient religious history. And I teach classes online too. You should check them out in my profile. And if we've met before, what's up? This is the second video of a series on hell in the Christian faith. And as this whole thing deserves more than a few 4 or 5 minute videos, we're going to spread it out a bit over the next few weeks. A few days ago, we kicked this thing off with a bang, and using the Bible, blew to bits this idea that hell is the ruling place of Satan and his demons. And if you haven't seen that video, check it out. But now that we've proven that Satan and the demons are not in hell as we traditionally think about hell, let's dive deeper into this word translated to us as HE double hockey sticks. But a few things. Take a deep breath, because these videos might mess with your brain. There are a lot of things that some of us have been taught over our lives that aren't necessarily correct. And it's okay if you get a little upset. It really is. I get it. These videos are not meant to upset you. If anything, these videos are like that pill in the Matrix, okay? You can choose to not change your thoughts about hell, or you can choose to go through the looking glass and see how deep this thing goes. Either way, you're free to choose. So scroll away or hang on tight. Are you ready? Okay. Now this part's for my fellow Christians. I know we like to think that how we think about things now is how things have always been thought about. But even a cursory glance at history shows this isn't the case. And if you're interested in that history of how things like the Bible came to be and the moments behind its creation, please check out some of the classes I offer online, as I don't have time to get into too much of that here. But know this, just like there are many ideas about hell and what's going on in hell today, there was just as much debate in the days when the books of this book were being written. And that's a historic, verifiable fact. That's right, even the writers of the Bible had different ideas of what hell and the afterlife actually were. And that's because the books of this book, which I personally believe are divinely inspired, are multivocal and were composed over a period of 1,500 or so years. Now, think about how your thought life of the world and what's in it is completely different from a person that lived in Rome 1,500 years ago. Shoot, try to imagine someone's thought life 200 years ago. Your understanding of the world is completely different. It was the same way for the writer of Revelation and the composer of the Song of Deborah in Judges 5, separated by maybe 1,300 odd years. These writers, the books of the Bible, had very different understandings of God's role in their lives and how God interacted with creation, who God actually was, what God wanted. These writers had different understandings of their history, their culture, their place in the world through famines, wars, disasters, exile, invasions. The world of the Bible was not static, and neither is this holy book. And yes, the idea of what we now call hell did change and has continued to change over the last few thousand years. So here are the basics, which we're going to dive into over the next few weeks. In the King James Version of the Bible, the word hell is mentioned 54 times, 31 times in the Old Testament, 23 times in the New Testament. See fiery flames throughout, burn baby burn. There's a lot of hell up in that Bible. But, and here's a problem, the word translated as hell in the KJV is actually 4 different words. Sheol in the Old Testament, and Hades, Gehenna, and Tartarus in the New. And technically, there's a 5th word that some use interchangeably for hell, the Hebrew word Abaddon. But in the Old Testament, Abaddon is kind of a supernatural realm set apart for destruction and those who cause destruction. And it's mentioned 5 times, Job 26, 28, and 31, once in Psalm 88, and in Proverbs 15:27. But in Revelation 9, something neat happens to Abaddon. The meaning of Abaddon has evolved. It is no longer just a place, but Abaddon becomes the angel of the abyss, who's the king of a plague of mutant locusts unleashed upon the world at the end of days. But in its original Hebraic meaning, Abaddon wasn't hell like we think of it, but a bottomless pit that was either next to Sheol, the resting place of the dead, or a compartment within Sheol, especially as we get closer to the Second Temple era. But all of that's for a later video, so don't worry about it right now. But when it comes to the four words often translated as hell in the KJV, Sheol, Hades, Gehenna, and Tartarus, each word means different things depending on the placement and contexts it's being used. And none of them exactly mean what our modern concept of hell means. Dum, dum, dum. Now, do not hear what I'm not saying. I'm not saying hell doesn't exist. This concept of a place of punishment or cleansing or whatever you want to call it, it's there in the Bible. But what I am saying is that our modern idea of what hell isn't what the ancients may have thought it was. And because of this, more recent translations of the Bible are moving away from the overarching hell translation and going back to the words that were translated into hell. Not because the translators have become more progressive or disbelieve the Bible or anything like that, but because they are moving to a more accurate rendering of the original texts. So in the KJV Old Testament, where hell is mentioned 31 times, in the Hebrew Bible, the ASV, the Amplified Bible, the CJB, the ESV, the HCSB, the JPSB, the Jewish Publication Society Tanakh, the NASB, the NET, the NIV, the REB, and the RSV, and a whole bunch of others, hell is no longer used and not mentioned even once in the Old Testament. Yeah, Ken, well, that's the Old Testament, and as Christians, we're under the New Covenant, and Jesus used the word hell. And that's cool, but while the 1611 and 1885 KJV used the word hell 23 times in the New Testament, once again, more recent translations are going back to the original Greek terms, with these translations using the word hell 14 times or less. The ASV, the Amplified, NASB, NCV, NIV, NLT, NRSV, REB, and the RSV, and even the New King James Version, the NKJV, the most popular Bible in America, using the word hell less than 14 times. And some translations don't use the word hell at all anymore. The NAB, the WEB, the YLT, and a host of others. So now that we know that the word that we translate as hell is actually a number of different words, even according to the New King James Version, what do those words tell us specifically about hell? Well, stay tuned for part 3, because we're going to start with the Old Testament and we're going to crack open Sheol, the subterranean underworld where the souls of the dead, both righteous and unrighteous, went after the body died. It's a bit gloomy, but don't worry, we'll punch it up. See you soon.